Francesca Sutton has been one of the bank's best workers. That is until a guy named Darnell decided it would be a good idea to rob the bank. After Frankie refuses to comply, he proceeds to blow the brains out of one of her customers. Just imagine you're going to the bank to make a deposit. Next thing you know, you take a bullet to the brain, and that's scary to think about. After the robbery, a visibly shaken Frankie is interrogated by Detective Strode and Waller. Then the owner of the bank tells Frankie that she failed to comply with the procedure, which is silent alarm on the left, money in the right.
What's the procedure? You're being robbed. You pull the money clip from your right hand drawer, and then you signal with the left hand.
Since Frankie recognized Darnell, they fire her. The detective believes she was involved with the robbery, but was she? Stay tuned to find out. Before we begin, if you want to see music bios or more good videos like this, hit the subscribe button. Also, I've started a Patreon account. On here you get more copyrighted material and they'll be uploaded 48 hours prior to YouTube. If you want to support or visit, link is in the description. And without further ado, on to our feature presentation. The movie shows Stoney throwing a 70s graduation party for her brother Stevie. We also meet Tashawn and Cleopatra. Stoney has been taking care of her brother since their parents were killed in a car accident, and during the party, they have a conversation about how he doesn't want to go to college as he didn't get a scholarship.
Just didn't get a scholarship.
They didn't give you a scholarship?
No.
But we told them the only way we could apply.
I know.
She tells him not to sweat it, as she'll come up with the plan. But for now, we meet Luther, whom the girls work for. He calls out TT for throwing the recyclables in the trash and docks her pay. She begs him not to do that as he promised to pay her under the table since she's struggling to pay for her babysitter for her son.
Heck, I mean, I didn't got enough money to pay for my babysitter.
On this good earth, there are three peoples I don't mess with. The I, the aura, and the S.
Once Luther leaves, they talk about Frankie and the robbery that she wasn't involved in. The next day, we see director Gary Gray talking to Cleo, clowning her on a ride, and he also tells Frankie to keep her head up after the robbery. This will be the first time Cleo teases the idea on how they should rob a bank. The girls scoff at the idea for now, and Frankie doesn't want to rob it, but instead she wants to go full dead presidents on it.
We ain't gonna rob no bank. Let's just go in there and blow it the up.
We meet Ursula, Cleo's girlfriend, one of the first lesbian couples showcased in film, and she only has like 2 lines in this whole movie. We also meet Nate, who offers Stoney a job on selling cars. She wants an advance to help Stevie get the money to go to college. He initially refuses, but offers him the unthinkable that I can't mention here on YouTube. That night, Frankie gets a job with the girls, and she's having a hard time. The next day, they go on the roof, roll up some weed while bumping Days of Our Lives by Bone Thugs and Harmony, and this will be the second time they teased the bank robbery idea. That night, Stoney shows Stevie the check to get him to college, and that's when Stevie tells her that he didn't get into UCLA. He tells her that college isn't for him, and she rips up the check, meaning she did the unthinkable for nothing. Stevie goes to Lorenz to hang out and clear his head. He ignorantly gets an AP haircut into his head, which stands for the project Lorenz is from, but what he doesn't know, police and SWAT is planning to raid Lorenz's hiding quarters, and his AP haircut was a clue in his identification. They ambush him and tell him to get on the ground. He's having a hard time doing this as the champagne Lorenz gave him is in his coat pocket. As he reaches for it, the police do what they do best towards black men, assume it's a gun and pummel him with bullets. Strode realized it was the wrong dude and tried to ask for help, but it was too little too late for Stevie Newsom. Stoney finds out, and obviously she's not taking this well. They talk about the bank robbery again, and with Frankie knowledge about bank, they all agree to start planning their first hit. They send Stoney and TT to case Downtown Federal, and Stoney gets distracted by Keith Weston. That night, since TT is struggling to pay her babysitter, she now has to bring her son to work. And he does what kids do best, getting into things they aren't supposed to. He drinks some cleaning supplies and is rushed to the hospital. He survives, but TT is confronted by Child Protective Services, who takes him away. Now everyone has motivation to rob a bank. Stoney wants retribution for what they did to her brother. Frankie wants retribution on how the banks was treating her. TT wants retribution from Child Protection Services. And Cleo, I guess she wants retribution from Gary Gray for clowning her car. She goes to Black Sam for a favor in borrowing weapons for their first hit. Cleo offers him interest, which he accepts as long as they don't get caught. They need a getaway car for their first robbery, and thanks to Cleo's experience in car theft, she's the perfect person for the job. That is until she stalls for time by throwing out CDs until she gets her hands on Eric B. and Rakim.
I ain't no joke. I used to let the mic smoke. Now I slam it
That's what I rock.
make sure it's broke. When I'm born,
Bank Robbery 1. South LA Savings and Loans. They go to South LA Savings and Loans and they are very nervous. They idiotically get into their disguises in the lobby. Not to mention Cleo left evidence on the CDs and cassette tapes that she thrown out. All this while TT nerves get the best of her and flees. In 1 minute, they were able to get $12,000, $3,000 apiece, which is even less if you factor in Sam's interest. Frankie believes TT don't deserve a cut as she didn't participate, but TT stood up for herself and Frankie concedes. Strode and Waller wants to pursue Stoney as a possible suspect, but one man told him to drop it over the Stevie Newsom headline. The plan was to act like nothing happened, but for Cleo, she blows through her $3,000 quickly, buying funny looking underwear and not showing up to work. Strode is still pressed in getting Stoney booked for the robbery, and they get a positive step when they pull up Cleo's mugshot for car theft in the past and now know that she, Frankie, and Stoney are affiliated with each other. We then get a Godfather scene ordering TT and Stoney to step up their game and order Balboa Savings and Loans as their next hit. Bank Robbery number 2, Balboa Savings and Loans. The next robbery TT finally participates in with Cleo as the getaway driver, and they get kind of lucky. A homeless guy is holding up all the police attention for disorderly conduct. Cleo then comes crashing in and literally drives through the bank. Fun fact, this scene was done in one take. The second robbery goes much better than the first. They get away with $300,000, which is about $75,000 apiece. And after this, they make a pretty dumb decision in storing the money at their place of work. And if they were going to store it in the vents, could they at least store it in further down or in one of the corners? Keith is holding a bank event and wants to take Stoney, and she shows up looking like a hot mess. And he takes her to get a makeover. And after the banking event, they make love while bumping to Don't Let Go Love by En Vogue. But back at work, Cleo, Frankie, and TT discover that Luther has left the business. Later finding out he found the girl's stash and fled. They get a hint from Sam since his interest is at stake, and they find Luther at a hotel buying a perm, Cristal, and a white woman. They confront him about the whereabouts on the money, and he draws a gun on Cleo, and that's when TT comes in to put 2 in his back, and that was that. Strode finds out about Luther's death and immediately brings Cleo in to participate in a lineup. The lone white woman witness gets intimidated by Cleo. I'm not gonna lie, this scene intimidated me as well. She refuses to snitch on Cleo and she gets away. Cleo returns and realizes they need to rob another bank or flee for good. They said Downtown Federal should be their third hit, and Stoney is now reluctant because that's where Keith works. Bank Robbery number 3, Downtown Federal. Before they get to their third robbery, Detective Strode and Waller talks to everyone about the 3 ladies. Keith recognizes that Stoney is one of the robbers, and after the meeting, Stoney calls Keith to get him out of there. They arrive and things go south. Stoney tells TT to get out, but Cleo tells TT to collect more money. And that 1 second split decision was enough time for Strode and Waller to intervene. Stoney and TT were set to surrender as he brings up Stevie and apologizes. And as they were surrendering, Dumb Cop fires 2 shots at TT, and they proceed to get into a shootout with everyone. As they switch vehicles, TT and Stoney have a heart-to-heart. They talk about Keith as Stoney's trying to keep her alive, but sadly, TT dies in Stoney's arms. That night, they get into a high-speed chase that is locally televised. The chase hits a standstill when the 2 choppers catch the cars in the middle of a tunnel. Cleo then tells Stoney and Frankie to get out, and she'll take the police head-on. Stoney runs into a bus depot, and Frankie will catch up with her later. But back with Cleo, she gets surrounded, and instead of surrendering, she decided to go out like a gangsta, and it's heartbreaking to watch. Maybe it was the music that made this scene gut-wrenching. But with Frankie, she is confronted by the cops and is ordered to surrender. She placed the gun to his neck and asks him what's the procedure for when carrying a gun.
So, procedure. when you got a gun in your head, huh? What's the procedure when you got a gun in your head?
As she runs, she's hit with 2 shots in the back, and that was that. Strode then catches Stoney on the bus, but instead of stopping it, he lets her go as he made her life a living hell to begin with. In Mexico, Stoney is in mourning all while Brandy's Missing You is playing. She gets a haircut and calls Keith one last time, assuring that she's okay.
Stoney, I'm glad you're safe.
I am.
And let me just say, I feel bad for Keith because since this moment, he hasn't treated a black woman right since. I said this before in one of my previous videos that this movie is in my top 10. And I know a ton of YouTubers have already covered this movie at length, but since this is one of my favorite films, I decided to cover this, and of course I have thoughts. Starting off with TT, a mother struggling to provide for her son, I felt like she was done the dirtiest here. Mistreated by Luther, and later the first one to die. All this just to get her son back. Next is Cleo, and I have an unpopular opinion on Cleo's death. I don't understand why everyone cried when she went out like a straight out gangsta. What did she have to lose? She was already a criminal in Grand Theft Auto. She didn't have a good reason other than she had priors and wanted to fix her prized possession, her car. And let me just say, she might have been a dominant one in the crew, but she's very submissive towards Stoney. But Queen Latifah, she left no crumbs with this role. Next is Frankie. She was one of the smartest in the bunch because she knew how banks work. But I do feel for her because she didn't have anything to do with the robbery in the beginning of the film. And you see that she's obviously traumatized, and like she said, she can't control who she knows. She also took the gangster route in her demise. And lastly, Stoney. She lost everything. Her parents, her brother, her friends, and possible boyfriend whom she played. It was for her what I had to lose. But in conclusion, fantastic film. Definitely check it out if you haven't. Just don't let desperate times lead to desperate measures. And that concludes the Set It Off recap. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.